before they awaken, King David's lost crown. Chapter 3 is called Caligula. Forests of Hyrcania is where it takes place, the Parthian Empire. The king was cursing and throwing things on the floor and against the walls in search of his dress gloves. By Mazda, I had them. I had them right here, he thundered. They were right here. He thrust a finger at the table. Right here. Where did you have them last? Responded the helpful queen. He pointed again to the table. Are you deaf, woman? I told you. Right here. They were right here. Whereupon Mithra popped up from where he'd been lounging in observation of the curious exchange, head between his paws, beneath the open window where the morning sun had been warming him, where the summer breeze had swirled and caressed his golden fur, and loped long-legged out of the room, that semi-sideways glide specific to Mithra, and returned moments later with the very gloves and dropped them at the king's feet. There was no look of shame on Mithra's face, only that open-mouthed smile, huffing out charm, tail straight out and whipping around like a windmill. The king roared his pleasure. His sides fairly shook with his laughter, and he rubbed Mithra's head. Unlike dogs, wolves rarely express a need for affection, though they certainly do love, and they show love, with pupils large and black and ears pasted back like they have none at all. So when King Artabanus rubbed the animal's head and said, "Good boy," Mithra cast back one of those looks and loped off to the sunshine and settled himself back down again. That animal, better than a servant, the king bellowed. Mithra fanned his tail again, as though he understood what had been said, as though a duty had been fulfilled. Then he curled it back around him again. The king had resisted the inclusion of a wolf into the family, but now was growing to love the animal. He still considered it foolish and unnatural to make a pet of an animal considered to be a predator, and spoke openly of it. Yet, when Mithra ate the pillows of his favorite Lectus, he laughed it off, saying he needed a new one anyway. When Mithra adopted a litter of baby squirrels, why he didn't have them for breakfast, no one will ever know. King Artabanus picked them up one by one in his giant and scarred hands and spoke to them as if he himself was nursing them. Maybe that was why the king loved Orestes so much, because there was a part of the king that was just like Orestes, gentle and compassionate, though he was afraid to admit it, even to himself, because the part everybody saw in the king was the part that allowed him to protect the kingdom and keep the warring Persian subfactions at peace with one another. It was the part that people depended upon, the part that people wanted. It was also the part that abused the people. King Artabanus soon became known as the Wolf King, and Parthia became known as the land of the wolves, Hyrcania. That's what Hyrcania means, wolf country. Mithra was an anomaly of nature, made so by Ahura Mazda, and by love. He was as large as he was gentle, and as gentle as he was large. Images were imprinted on tapestries and carved into stone, on doors, on balustrades, on walls, even in the hills, on cliffs, of a wolf with golden fur and penetrating yellow eyes. The eyes of Mithra, the king's fierce companion and protector. The king still worried and vocalized it from time to time, wondering if a time would come when Mithra would turn, because you can never take the wild out of the wild, as Gotarzes warned that first day when Mithra came into their lives. Now and then Mithra was put on a leash for show only. One such time was a morning when a visiting dignitary wanted to experience the forests of wolf country and wanted to see the wolf firsthand. This particular visitor is a very important person, King Artabanus told his son. We must all be on our best behavior. What is his name? Inquired Orestes. King Artabanus laughed and smacked his lips and stroked the whiskers that tended to mat themselves upon his mouth, whereupon a smile curved upward. His name? Who can say it? The Romans and their names. Gaius Julius Caesar Augustus Germanicus is his name. The Romans have a flair for complexity. He is known by the common name of Caligula, which means little boots, because as a youngster, apparently he would visit his father's army camp and clomp around in his father's oversized boots. How old is he? Well, he's only 13. Even though he is younger than you, son, I am hoping that you two can be friends. Remember what I told you about how important it is to be honorable toward our Roman guests. There could come a time when he will be emperor, That amuses me, said Orides. The Romans are enemies, yet they are our friends. The two countries are threatening war, yet entertaining their dignitaries as if they were visiting royalty. Ah, but this one is royalty. His father is Germanicus, the adopted son of the Emperor Tiberius, and a prominent general in the Roman army, and most beloved by the people. The references to Julius Caesar comes because Caligula is of the Julian dynasty, and the reference to Augustus honors the great Caesar Augustus, to whom he is a grandson-in-law and great-nephew, and that, I believe, makes him the nephew of the current emperor. Does it not? I lose track of all the nephews and the sons and the grandsons and the sons-in-law. At any rate, he is royalty, and he will be treated as such. Why not just love them all and be done with it, young Orides mused. Then they would no longer be enemies. Imagine for a moment what kind of a world it would be if there was nothing to kill or die for. The king interrupted him with his laughter and put a hand on his son's shoulder. Ah, my son, my son. If only life were that simple. Someday you will grow up and understand the world as it is. Here you are, 18 years old, and still you have the idealism of a child. My son, my son. You need not worry about me, Father. I will be cordial to our guest. Yes, I suppose you will. It is not in your nature to be otherwise, which is good, because soon I will be sending you to Rome. Rome? Me? But why? Why, indeed, for the furthering of your education and for culture and refinement, as was done with Vonones. But we must be careful and send you there under the cloak of secrecy. Vonones was rejected by the Parthian people after returning. They referred to him as Caesar's bondslave. That is the reason I am king and he is not. I do not want that to happen to you. Then why send me at all? There is much that can be learned from the Roman people. Trust me when I say this, future governments will be patterned after the Roman system. Little Boots was not at all what Orides had expected. Orides liked him instantly. In some ways, Caligula was a lot like Orides, shy, polite, and much more reserved than the other sons of visiting kings. King Artabanus insisted that Mithra be on leash during the boy's entire visit. For the sake of the king's image, guests expected the king's wolf to be fearsome, and great effort was made to convey just such an image. Among other shrewd tactics, the fang game was employed, where Orides or King Artabanus would grab Mithra's two longer fangs with their forefingers and play tug-of-war. Mithra loved the game. He would growl and twist and pull and display a terrifying facade. But one look at his face, ears pasted back and pupils wide with love and affection, would reveal that the gentle animal was having fun, nothing more. And it was understanding the power of his jaws. Of course, no one but a wolf expert would know that. The forest was particularly green that day, and the tops of its bare and rocky upper mountains were ringed in low-lying clouds, enough to encase the entire valley in softness, letting just enough of the sun to paint itself through upon the trees of the forest and the wildflowers. It was beautiful the way the sun lay. A well-kept secret, Orides told his guest. Most think Parthia as being no more than barren rock and high desert. As you can see, Orides swept the entire valley with a wide gesture. That is not true. Everyone thinks the same about the land of the Jews, said Caligula, musing, that it is nothing more than barren desert. But in the north, where the Jordan has its beginning, where the god Pan lives and plays, it is like this, filled with trees and forest creatures. I have been there many times. It is one of my favorite places. I am told you are a Jew by birth. Orides looked at his guest with bewilderment. Ah, perhaps I should not have said anything, said Caligula, an apology veiled in shrewdness. What do you mean? What are you talking about? I'm sorry. I should not have spoken. I thought you knew. Knew what? Caligula spoke at a level far above that of a 13-year-old, the 13-year-old that he was. Well, that you are not the natural son of your father and mother. Have you not wondered why you do not look like your brothers? Have you not wondered why you look more like a Jew than a Persian? A mischief maker. This he had been told about the young Caligula, and he was prepared for such. But this, he had not been prepared for. He felt like slapping the little bastard, for Caligula himself had questionable birth. And Orodes had his mouth half open, ready to say so. No bigger around than a poker was this little boy called Little Boots. And his face was pocked with pimples, and he was afraid of even the smallest of forest creatures. When a hyrax came scampering across the road, he stiffened with fear. The low-lying clouds to the east flashed with a jagged stripe of lightning, and it caused him to jump. Rather than jabbing with mischief, Orodes kept silent, remembering his promise to his father that he would be courteous to this bizarre guest of royalty. After walking for a few moments in silence, Orodes asked a question, forced by his need to know. "What are you saying? Are you saying I'm adopted? That the king is not my real father?" "Ask him. Everyone knows apparently but you. Even the beggars lining the streets of Esquiline in Rome know that Prince Orodes of Parthia is not the true son of King Artabanus, that he was rescued from the slave cages as an infant, but evidently the rumors are wrong. You should know more than me." With each beat of his heart, a great emptiness thudded from within Orodes. Could it be true? He hated Caligula for telling him, yet if it was true, should he not thank him? It was his adopted father he should hate, yet if it were true, should he not thank his adopted father for saving him from the slave cages, for giving him a life other slaves would never know? So why did the emptiness exist? Why should he even care? "Well, I can tell you right now, the rumors are wrong," said Orodes. "Perhaps we should walk back." "Let's wait a while," said Caligula. "Rest a bit. I'm tired, and I'm enjoying the forest." They were right. The forests of Hyrcania are greener than any other kind of green. He settled himself on a fallen gray snag, in itself beautiful, for out of the rotted-out pockets grew sprigs of young trees. Caligula commented on it. Life growing out of death. It was a strange world, where life feeds on life, where life grows out of death, where life creates death, where death creates life. Orodes had been warned. He'd been given instructions to indulge Caligula's curious whims. But this was before he knew that those curious whims included sexual proclivities, because Caligula's hand kept going beneath Orodes' tunic and under his loin garments to fondle his genitals. Then Caligula's lips pressed against his ear. Even then, Orodes was careful in what he said. "You were very attractive," he told Caligula, though he wasn't, with a nose thin and small, arms far too thin, and a torso that tended to fall over before his spindly legs could catch up to it. "But I cannot. I'm committed to another. Another man, I presume. How'd you get that black eye, anyway?" "Not a black eye. It's a birthmark. I've had it since the day I was born." Caligula's smile spread wide. "Tell me," he said, "how would this other man know you, this other man you're supposedly committed to? How would he find out? I certainly won't tell." Caligula was continuing to press against him, attempting to kiss him, caress him. Orodes was continuing to push him away. "I would know, and I made a promise to be true to this person. If I were Caesar, I could order you to submit to me. Even then I wouldn't. Perhaps you would if it meant your life." "Nope, not even then." Orodes was being firm now and was holding Caligula at a distance. "I'm being polite, okay, as I was told to be, but truly, listen to me when I say you are testing my patience. I wonder what would happen if I told everyone what I have discovered, that you are not only a Jew, but are of the other sort, and that you were attempting to force yourself upon me. What then? I would simply deny it. The dirty deed would reverse itself and land upon you." How Caligula could possibly have known about his sexual preference was a surprise and a mystery. Except for the man to whom he was committed, he'd not told anyone. "Perhaps you would be more cooperative if it meant your life, or the life of someone you love, Your precious wolf, maybe?" Orodes ignored the threat. "My man friend and I have agreed to be fair to one another. That's all there is to it," he said. "Your religion tells you this? It's a simple matter of right and wrong and of responsibility. Religion has nothing to do with it." Orodes could tell that the rejection was angering Little Boots, and that his green eyes were hiding dark thoughts. "Time for us to return home," said Orodes. "Come, Mithra, Mithra jumped to his feet at the command. "Oh, we," said Caligula. "Look at that animal. Look how he obeys. Too bad you don't obey as agreeably." Neither spoke to one another as they walked. A hyrax scampered by, and Mithra took off after it, jerking the leash out of Oreides' hand. The king insisted that it be a chain leash. Mithra could effortlessly bite through anything less, so when it became caught in the crevice of a split rock formation, he had not the ability to free himself. Even a wolf's teeth are not as strong as iron. Mithra was not howling, no need for that. He knew that the human protectors, who had always kept him from harm, would come and set him free. And in fact, one was there, right in front of him, the skinny one. But why was he not doing it? Why was he walking away, this strange friend of his master's? No need to worry. He would be back. Of course he would. And if not, his master would come. Someone would come. It was the way of the world. Mithra knew of no other possibility. Unlike his forest siblings, he had never known hunger. He had never known danger. He never had to fight for shelter. He never learned to fear man. Mithra's needs had always been provided for by these great and wonderful creatures that walked on two legs, that had wisdom beyond his own, that would protect him always. "There he is," pointed out Little Boots, gesturing with his outstretched arm in a direction opposite to the one in which he had caught sight of Mithra, sitting, waiting, right over there. "Mithra, come!" Oreides went running in the direction Little Boots had pointed, the wrong direction. And of course, Mithra was not there. Oreides kept calling, unconcerned, expecting him to come bounding out from underneath the underbrush at any moment. And when it didn't happen, the worst kind of fear gripped Oreides, because he knew something had gone wrong. It was a fear every bit as strong as the terror that comes to a parent searching for a lost child or a shepherd searching for a lost lamb. It gripped him so hard it robbed him of breath. With senses heightened, Mithra heard the call and responded with a deep and low howl, but it blended with the rush of a nearby creek and the approaching thunder of a storm and simply could not be heard, at least not by the one person who needed to hear it. One will never know what caused Caligula to do such a thing. There's a darkness within some people, that's all. It's rare, fortunately. It's rarer still that such a person comes into power. But destiny would yield to the dark side. Little Boots would possess power. In 10 years, he would succeed his great-uncle as the Emperor of Rome, and the world would tremble. The Parthian royal family did not know how attached it was to the wolf named Mithra until he was gone. They were all thrown into a panic as they searched, then into dismay when the search turned up nothing. Each family member participated. The king eventually called out the army. "Comb the forest inch by inch," he instructed his soldiers. "I want that animal found." For days they searched. "Begging your pardon, your magnificence," said Arasaces on the seventh day. Arasaces was general of the king's eastern forces and was a great hunter and understood forest creatures. "Mithra is a wolf, your majesty. Could it not be that he responded to a longing within to rejoin his pack?" "Did you remember what I said? Do you remember what I told you?" shouted the king. "He is dragging a chain around with him." "Yes, your magnificence, yes," said the general. So yet again they searched. On the 10th day, Mithra was found, or at least the place was found where his chain had become entangled. A broken section of the leather collar lay on the ground, having marks that could only have been made by powerful teeth. The other end was still wedged within the rock crevice. A small patch of blood was there also, imprinted with multiple paw prints, more than could be made by one animal. After that day, the king gave up the notion of ever finding Mithra, but still continued with the search. At one point, the Parthian army spent an entire week, day and night, in the forest in search of Mithra. But a wolf pack is elusive as it is cunning. At night, the moon lit the way, large and ornate in the fog-filtered sky. Still Mithra and his pack was not found. The search did provide Oreides with a chance to connect with his father the king. When they would sit beneath that moon and before a fire that snapped and popped with sparks that melded with the stars, and sip beer. Beer, by the way, was invented by the Parthians way back, by the Persians actually, back before this time. They would sometimes hear wolves when they would sit and talk. They'd sometimes hear wolves from a distance, mournful sounds echoing above the treetops. Sometimes, reflected in the firelight, they'd see a set of eyes, large or small. They couldn't tell, just eyes. A bear? A hyrax? A wolf, maybe? Mithra? Sometimes Orides would shout into the darkness, "Mithra, is that you, Mithra? Come, come, Mithra, come, come." But nothing would happen, other than the cracking of twigs and underbrush as the calls frightened away whatever animal had been there. Once, in the clear light of early morning, while standing upon a cliff overhang, King Artabanus waved his arm as if to pass it over the entire Parthian landscape, talking to his son. "All this will someday be yours to administer," he said to his favored son. Most children would give their weight in gold to hear such words. But Orides was not such a person. His mind was on what he had just been told, the truth about his adoption. His father, the king, had admitted to it. But it was a truth that came tinged. King Artabanus told him that his natural father had been a traitor and a criminal, because that's what he had been told those 10 and more years ago when the child had come to them from the slave cages. There was even a rumor among the Parthians that the traitors had saved the child from the sacrificial altar at the last moment, at the very point of the raising of the knife. The Jews believed at the time, the Jews were believed at the time to have practiced child sacrifice because of a story of a man named Abraham, a thing particularly detestable to Mazda. The king assured Orides that they had raised him as their own, and that it didn't matter to them that he was not blood offspring, in the same fashion that it didn't matter to Augustus Caesar that his stepson Tiberius was not blood offspring. The government was Caesar's to pass to whomever he chose, was the king's example, just as Parthia's government is mine to pass to whomever I choose, with the endorsement of the Magi, of course. And trust me when I say the Magi will support my decision, my choice to name you. Belteshazzar will see to that. But the silence reigned as they both looked out at the land from the high cliff top. It was the king himself who broke the spell. "Worry not, my son. You are nothing like your father." "And what is my father like?" "I've already told you. He sold your people and their land to the Romans and nearly took your life, the life of his only begotten son. The slave traders saved you from the sacrificial altar. Prior to that, I don't know what transpired." No, I mean you. What are you like? You are my father." It pleased Artabanus to hear that. "I would like to think that I am a strong king," Artabanus responded, "the man who holds the warring factions of the Parthians together. Sometimes at night I hear the screams of men. There are rumors that you torture those who disagree with you. It is said that you sometimes torture and kill your own guards." Artabanus hung his head as though to speak of it gave him pain. "There are times when you must do things that are unpleasant," was his response, "when you were a king." And then he let it be known by holding his palm up that he would speak no further on the matter. "We must return," he said, "for you must make preparations for your trip to Rome, for the furthering of your education. You will stay with the emperor himself." "I have no desire to go to Rome." "Look, Mithra's gone. We all have to accept that. It's a fact. It's difficult, I know. It's difficult for me as well, but he's gone. Your mother will help you prepare. It's a long trip." "But what about what we sometimes see on the eastern ridge?" Orides was referring to the ridge that overlooks the city and the wildlife that comes to gather there sometimes. "Wolves on occasion. And there was always one off by itself, as if it didn't quite belong, too far away to know for sure. It could be Mithra. He's bigger than the rest, just like Mithra. And it does seem to have golden brown coloring like Mithra." "It's not him," said the king. "And even if it were him, it's clear that he's made his decision." "It is him. I know it is." "Then he's made his choice, and you should accept that. You should leave him be." The logic of it was sound, but to accept it was hard. It was as if Orides had lost a lover. Mithra had gone everywhere with him over the years as he grew up, had slept with him, had listened to the deepest thoughts and understood them. Orides truly believed that. Everyone had given up, but not Orides. Orides walked the hills and the valleys daily, with his broken heart. And Gotarzes assisted. The two brothers had become close during the past 3 years of having Mithra in their lives. The animal had been a type of a bridge between the two of them, commonly a commonality that bonded them. Also bonding them was the diametric opposite sides of their characters: softness, hardness, gentility, strength, so that together, as a unit, they were made stronger than their individual parts. For it was Gotarzes who was the committed paramour that Orides spoke of, his own adopted brother.